Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. It is so good to be together. Let's turn just our sound on so we can hear one another give greetings this morning. Hello. Unmute yourself for a few moments, and we'll hear each other say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Glenda.
Good morning.
Hello.
Just the sound.
Hello.
Just the sound.
See you sometime.
Christian.
Good morning.
Oh, it is
Hello,
good to hear
everybody.
So many voices that I know.
Natuurlijk keurig.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
And those of you having unmuting problems, that's good. Now the tech crew know. And
Thomas muss zorgen, wanneer
Zo had je alles aangestellt.
What's going on?
Dat zeg ik dan nog meer mee.
And now, let us begin our service. We light our chalice with words from the Oberlin Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Oberlin, Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather round this light of hope as we share this time together. With our centering words each week, we draw on one of the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words come from the theologian and activist, founder of the Sojourners Community and magazine, Jim Wallis. Hope is believing in spite of the evidence, then watching the evidence change. Let us follow the sound of the bell into silence. Will you please join in singing, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People"? The words are in your order of service.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Sharpie, don't forget, you were going to show me about yoga. That's right. You said you felt stressed out because of global climate change and because your human friends are worried about COVID, racism, and the elections. Right. And I showed you how to do sitting meditation, but sitting still isn't something that you like to do. Right. And now we're going to do yoga. And after I learn how to do yoga, maybe I won't feel so stressed out. What is yoga anyway? What we call yoga, or more properly, Hatha yoga, is one of a set of Hindu spiritual practices which also includes bhakti or devotional yoga, jnana or knowledge yoga, and karma yoga. Hatha yoga consists of asanas or postures and dates back to the Vedic... What? Sharpie, this is too complicated for me. I just want something that's going to help me feel less stressed. Honestly, I don't really know how to do yoga myself, but a friend of mine who's a yoga teacher recommended an online video on beginner yoga that you could watch. Let's do it! Here, let me find that video.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, hi, Nanas. I'm going to learn how to do yoga.
Yoga. I want to try too.
This might be a little hard for a little monkey like you.
Please?
Sure, why not? Okay, the video's all set up now. Now, lift your left hand up and move your right hand down. Well, how did it go? Good, I guess. Nana's had fun. She's still sitting in full lotus position and meditating. How did it go for you? Yoga was just too hard for me. I know. You have to keep doing it for long enough so that you can get good at it. But it just didn't feel good for my body. If I want exercise, I'll just go outside and raid compost piles or something. Mindfulness meditation didn't work for you. Yoga didn't work for you. I know you like talking. So next week we'll try something with words in it. That sounds great!
If you, like Possum, would like to share about how you're feeling stressed out or anything else that's distressing you or bringing you joy right now, caring and sharing is the time when we share those things together. You can send me an email at joyconcern@uucpa.org or post right in the Zoom chat. Either way, I'll share it out loud for everybody. Let us take some quiet time now of prayer and meditation to hold all that we've heard. So many things moving through people's lives. Illness and recovery and cats and marriages and just so much just on this surface of what we have heard. So let us hold each other gently offering especially the compassion of our hearts to anyone who is suffering, and feel with gratitude the connection among us. Blessed be. By Your Side Singers are UUCPA's pastoral care choir, and even though they cannot go house to house and visit people right now, they have found a way to bring us their music. They are going to lead us in singing Dona Nobis Pacem. Those are the words. It means give us peace, so please join the By Your Side Singers in singing with us, in singing together.
Dona nobis pacem, pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem, 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 pacem, dona nobis 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 pacem.
Our first reading today comes from Mr. Tanaka Terumi. I was 13 years old when I experienced the atomic bombing of Nagasaki, which took the lives of 5 of my family members. When the atomic bomb was dropped, I was upstairs in my house, 3.2 kilometers from the hypocenter. Suddenly, I saw a huge flash. I ran downstairs, and as soon as I laid on the floor, I became unconscious. When I woke up, I found myself under glass doors blown by the blast. Miraculously, the glass was not broken, and I did not suffer any major injuries. 3 days later, I entered Ground Zero to find my relatives. Some had burned to death where their house used to be. Others survived, but soon died with heavy burns or fever from radiation. Altogether, 5 of my family were killed. Everywhere, many victims with heavy injuries and hundreds of dead bodies were left unattended. It was literally hell. Our second reading is from UUCPA member Richard Duda, who wrote an essay about this and gave me permission to share his words. What do all of our existential threats have in common? It seems to me that they all share three attributes. One, they are the result of human activities. We created them, we can solve them. Two, but there is little that any one of us on our own can do about them. Three, furthermore, they are global in character. They cannot be solved without major cooperation between the nations of the world. But therein lies some good news. International cooperation is promoted by peace. And despite everything you may have heard, despite the 30 years of war in the Middle East, despite the stoking of fears about Russia and North Korea and China, the world is actually getting more peaceful. Perhaps the most important thing anyone can do is to be a peacemaker. Whether it is being at peace with yourself, promoting peace in the family and the local community, or promoting peace in the larger world. UUCPA's Healing the Divide program is a great example. Although we cannot wait for world peace before reducing the threat of nuclear war, it is my firm belief that moving toward more peaceful relations is a prerequisite for abolishing nuclear weapons. In Hiroshima, the Peace Park has been built in front of the last building, the only building left standing from the hypocenter of the bomb that dropped there on August 6th, 1945. A lawn spreads out in front of its shell. And on the memorial cenotaph, it says, "Rest in peace, for the mistake shall not be repeated." This week, on the 75th anniversary of our dropping nuclear bombs, first on Hiroshima and then on August 9th, today's date on Nagasaki, if we had a tower with a bell, we would join other congregations in pealing it 75 times, one peal for each year. It's been that long that we have lived under this sword of Damocles. You may know that expression. Let me tell you the brief story of where it comes from. The sword of Damocles, meaning that the feeling of having a threat hanging over you, comes from an ancient king named Dionysius, who was challenged by citizen Damocles, who said, "It's not that difficult to be king. You have all this power, we have none. I would love to switch places with you." Maybe you've thought the same sometimes, thinking you could do a better job than the person in charge. Dionysius said, "Fine, fine, you can be king for a day and see how it feels." But before he left his throne room, he had a sword hung right over the throne by a single horsehair, just enough to keep the sword from falling. And when Damocles took up his seat on the throne, he saw that deadly point hanging above him, hanging on just by a thread. That, Dionysius wanted him to know, is how it feels to have power. One hangs always under a threat. And that's where we have been. Given this tremendous power, we have seized this tremendous power and used it against other human beings. Twice, 75 years ago, and since in other forms. Ask the people of Iraq, who have suffered many deformities from depleted uranium, so-called depleted uranium shells. We wield this tremendous power, and we feel the threat all the time. This is the reality with which all of us throughout the world have lived, at least since our young adulthood, if we're really elderly. We, human beings, are capable of turning this world into hell. We know that now. We have not stayed our hand from doing so to these two cities and we can turn the entire planet into a Nagasaki and a Hiroshima. The only thing keeping the 14,000 or so nuclear weapons from turning everything into a Holocaust is that we, as citizens of a nuclear power, are hostages. Our enemy, our partner, has its missiles pointed at us, and we have our missiles pointed at our enemies, our partners, our counterparts across the planet. We are holding them hostage. First, 2 powers facing off, then for many years 5, and now there are 9 nuclear powers. Confronted with this reality, living with this kind of memory of suffering and loss, with this fear and helplessness, the helplessness of power and powerlessness, there are several responses. We can ignore it. We can hide it from ourselves and others. And the hibakusha, those who survived the bomb blasts in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, were largely hidden, even in Japan for many years. We can cower in fear. We can sink into resignation. We can take on a cynicism of not caring about whether we or anyone else live or die. We can retreat into the hysteria of hedonism. Okay, everything's going to end, could end at any moment, so why bother about anything serious at all? We could take hope from the fact that, hey, it's been 20 years, and then 40 years, and then 60 years, and we haven't killed ourselves yet. We can spin fantasies, imagining escaping from Earth altogether, escaping from humanity. We can spin sci-fi imaginings of being able to put our fatal knowledge into a bottle at the bottom of a cave and no longer know how to destroy ourselves. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I'm sure I'm not the only person who occasionally counts the days until, according to the Star Trek universe, the Vulcans will find us and make things better. We can focus all our attention upon smaller fears, worrying about the little things so that we don't have to even notice there's a sword above our head. Or we can take action, which is small. As Dick Duda said, each of us can do very little. But given these other options of panic or fantasy or denial, action is pretty good. To do something, however small. And of course it is small, but how long can we sustain even that action if we feel helpless and hopeless? I want to preach a hopeful message this morning. And I want to preach a true message. I honestly don't know if both are possible. I'd like to be able to say that the progress that we've made is so astonishing that nuclear weapons now stand as an emblem symbolizing our ability to climb out of the deepest pit. That wouldn't be true either. We have made tremendous progress, and we can always slide back down. But I do think that the current state of affairs shows us our best hope. There is agreement of many people across the political spectrum, across the world of disarmament work and foreign policy and saber rattling, that we must have multilateral nuclear disarmament, that is worth pursuing, and that it is possible. For example, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, Sam Nunn, and William Perry wrote an essay saying just that several years ago. any agreement, however wary and tentative, forged between Physicians for Social Responsibility, with which William Perry is now partnering, and Henry Kissinger has got to have something going for it. The 14-year-old girl that I was, pretty sure that the way I was going to meet my end was in a nuclear war, and that the age at which I would meet it was before 30. That girl would have been impressed, maybe even hopeful, to hear about that coalition. As it was, the fear of nuclear war, the brinksmanship of the 1980s, in which I grew into this political awareness, combined with teenage angst and adolescent arrogance, made me into an activist. Maybe any issue would have done it, but this was mine. Freeze Voter was the first organization that I worked with on political issues, and the anti-nuclear march in New York City in the early 80s was my very first large demonstration. There's a saying you may have heard, I've heard it many times, attributed to Margaret Mead, which is not correct. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. As I say, that wasn't Margaret Mead. I wish we could credit whomever did say it, because it's true. The fact that we have made any progress, and any progress we will continue to make, is down to a group of thoughtful, committed citizens. That is all we have. And for all the changes that have ever come to us for the better, that's been what it took. Dick Duda was inspired by his experiences here at UUCPA to make nuclear disarmament his cause. In turn, he's been doing the work and feeding it back to us, telling us what we can do, how we can help, building a virtuous cycle, spiraling out toward the light, away from under this sword, if just for a moment here and there. Just as our failure to disarm when the then Soviet Union did the unthinkable, the unimaginable in my teenage years, and unilaterally reduced its holdings of nuclear weapons, just as that threatened to topple activists of that time into despair, we can spill back into despair at any moment when our country and North Korea play brinksmanship once again after making so much progress. But we can build this virtuous cycle. Work, tell others how to join the good fight. Spread the word. Start small, spread outwards. There's no guarantee of safety. We can't forget what we know. The doomsday clock set to remind us how much danger we're in is now closer to midnight than it has ever been since its establishment in 1947, having been moved to 100 seconds to midnight after the recent standoff between the US and North Korea. But we have also built something a little bit more hopeful than Albert Einstein's anguished cry that everything has changed except our ability to understand and grapple with the moral reality in which we now live. I began with Mr. Tanaka's words, as mild as his description is compared to many descriptions of those terrible, terrible days and their aftermath. I begin there with his childhood recollection of the most destructive possible bomb falling on his city in that moment. Because I think that remembering the stakes is important. Even though for some, it's too dark, too scary. I know kids are listening. And for some, even that memory sends them into a downward spiral of despair, which I don't want. And I end with what we can do, even though for some, listing those things will sound like never enough, a hopeless dream, too glib. But it's important to talk about what we can do. And so I'd like to share 5 things being asked of us by people such as William F. Perry, articulated by Dick Duda, along with Judy Adams in the Menlo Park Almanac just this past week. Things we can do as citizens is press for no first use. Our nation does not hold that policy. We have a policy that says that the highest priority is to deter potential adversaries from mounting an attack, whether it's a nuclear attack or a conventional attack. But we have other ways of defending ourselves if we are attacked. And so having a no first use of nuclear weapons policy would significantly reduce the danger that a conflict such as happens in the world could rapidly escalate out of control. It also would protect us against false alarms, of which there have been many. Something else we can do is broaden the group that needs to make a nuclear decision. At the moment, that decision in the United States is up to one person, the president. No one can lawfully prevent the president from ordering a nuclear attack. This is a Cold War era policy, and it is outdated, and it's very dangerous. There are practical ways to have a body, say, of 3 people who must confer and decide so that no single individual has this power. Something third we can do, also a legacy from the Cold War era, is that our intercontinental ballistic missiles are on hair trigger alert, meaning if we have the slightest concern that we are being attacked, they go onto red alert. This is very, very dangerous, needless to say. It risks false alarms and accidentally beginning a war when there was no threat. So we can take our land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles off hair trigger alert, or better yet, as Dick Duda writes, and as advocated by former Secretary of Defense William Perry, also former president of this congregation, by the way, we can completely eliminate these missiles. The fourth thing we can do, speaking of all our nuclear arms, is to stop modernizing them. We are spending so much money bringing our nuclear weapons up to date. The current plans call for developing new warheads and new delivery systems at the cost of at least $2 trillion over the next 30 years. And knowing how these expenditures work, probably much, much more. This would be a colossal waste of money. It would not actually make us more safe. It would make us less safe. And finally, we can actively pursue a verifiable agreement to eliminate nuclear arsenals. Dick writes, this is admittedly the hardest of the 5 steps, but there are reasons for hope. And one is the Non-Proliferation Treaty, under which the total of nuclear weapons around the world came down from more than 70,000 to today's total of around 14,000. 14-year-old me would have been astonished. And the UN General Assembly, much more recently, in 2017, passed the Treaty on the Prohibitions of Nuclear Weapons, which shows the will of the international body, not any of the nuclear powers. But now the 9 of us have to stand against all these other countries that say you must not allow nuclear weapons to be used or indeed to be owned. So 5 things we can press for as citizens: no first use, limiting the president's power and requiring a larger command structure to make nuclear war happen, take our intercontinental ballistic missiles, our ICBMs, off hair trigger alert and ideally get rid of them, cancel the modernization program that is costing trillions of dollars, and actively pursue a verifiable multilateral agreement to get rid of all of the arsenals in these 9 countries around the world. Dick Duda and his friend Judy Adams wrote about this in an op-ed praising and thanking Menlo Park mayor for joining the Back from the Brink movement, championed by, among other luminaries, former Secretary of State William Perry. Only a handful of California cities have signed on. You could help make your city the next one, a grassroots movement that tells the government of our country and others that we take this seriously, that we are paying attention to the nuclear danger, and we will keep pulling them back from the brink. And as Dick noted in the reading that I shared, we can each work on becoming peacemakers in other places in our lives, working to end the danger of climate change, which plays so dangerously into this worldwide conflict potential, working for Black Lives Matter and other anti-racism work, meeting with the Healing the Divide group, learning how to practice compassion and peace in our own lives, in our families. Making that the center of our lives will help us to know what to do when a policy matter is before us. So let us return to this place right here. And I ask you now to enter with me into addressing in yourself or in the world whatever the source is of your strength, your courage, your insight, your goodness. Whatever that source is, let us address it together. Let us pray. O source that helps me know what is right, that helps me to act upon what I know and believe. Help me to emerge from fear and helplessness. Help me to know my strength and to take action. Source of all that is good, when I look over my head, may I see not just power and powerlessness, this point of a deadly sword hanging above me. May I see the blue sky, the birds with their song. May I see branches blossoming. May I see all that is good and beautiful and beloved and deserving of my protection, so that I may act not from fear, not from desperation, but from love. This I pray, that the mistake shall not be repeated. Amen and blessed be. Let us sing now together. I sang this song so that you could learn it. I've sung it 3 times. If you don't know it, you can hear it through the first time and then join in the second and third. It's called Circle Round for Freedom, and I would love to just sing it for you right now. But for the sake of the safety of our camera operator, I don't want to sing in this space. So I recorded it yesterday. Please join me in singing Circle Round for Freedom. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for Circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. I skipped a line, but it's important for us to collect our offering, which is our way of expressing our gratitude to this congregation and all that it does, and to joining in the efforts that we make in the world through our liberal religious community. If you're joining us for the first time, please, you're our guest. Just enjoy the music. Everyone else, you can follow the links in your order of service to give to UUCPA. We extinguish our chalice with words from the Reverend Wayne B. Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. I invite you now to unmute yourself, turn on your video so that we can say our benediction, seeing and hearing one another. While you're doing that, I'll remind you that if you'll stay after the benediction, we'll all be sorted into breakout rooms randomly. And if you want to change breakout rooms after you've chatted with folks there for a while, you can come back to the main room and the host will reassign you. We'll keep the rooms open for about half an hour. Now, let us say our benediction together. Go out to the world
in peace,
be of
Good
Courage.
fast what is good, but no one evil.
Evil.
Within the faint-hearted, the weak,
Weak.
suffering,
joy
and
and
beauty.
deed,
Love with word and deed.
all be.
See you in the breakout rooms. Please